Okay guys, so you're going to buy your first crossbow. Well, in today's video, we'll go over some of the important things to consider when you're buying that first crossbow. And hopefully, by the end of the video, you'll have a very clear picture of the kind of crossbow that's going to work for you. I just need to straighten a few things up here. Oh, what's this doing here? Hey there, outdoor YouTubers. So, you're looking to get your first crossbow, but you're a little bit new to crossbows, so you have a few questions. Well, let's see if we can't get you headed in the right direction. Now, for most of us, we're going to be deer hunting with these crossbows, so that's the approach that I'm going to take in this video. We're going to try to find a crossbow that works for you for the way you intend on deer hunting. Now, as I go through this video, I'll be touching on certain subjects that you may want more information on. Safety, maintenance, how far to shoot, scopes, sighting in, that sort of stuff. And I have several other separate videos that dive further into a lot of these subjects. So I'll leave links to these videos in the description of this one, and I'll be mentioning those links periodically throughout this video. Now, right off the bat, price is going to be a major factor for most people when it comes to buying their first crossbow. A typical crossbow or crossbow package can run anywhere from $200 all the way up to $3,500 or even more. So you're going to want to figure out what kind of price range you have to spend on this crossbow. And then we can figure out what features to look for within this price range. So, can you get a good deer hunting crossbow in the price range of $200 to $400? Well, in my opinion, yes. In fact, I own some of the lower end priced crossbows, and I've shot deer with them. And I'll tell you, I've been pretty impressed with some of these crossbow packages that actually come in at under $400. Well, if you can get a good crossbow package for under, say, $400, why would you spend anything more? Well, that's the purpose of this video. We want to go over some of the main things to consider when buying a crossbow, and depending on what you feel is important to you, that crossbow or crossbow package may cost a little bit more. Now, after price, probably the biggest thing that most people look at when it comes to buying a crossbow is the speed. How fast is that crossbow rated? Well, are faster crossbows better crossbows? Kind of depends. Faster crossbows will shoot flatter out to further distances than slower crossbows, and that's a good thing. Now, most modern crossbows will shoot at speeds at over 300 feet per second, and some of the higher end ones will actually reach speeds at over 500 feet per second. Now, a lot of hunters like to keep their shots at less than 40 yards when they're shooting at deer. So, do you need a crossbow that shoots over 500 feet per second if you're going to be taking a little bit shorter shots like that? No, not really, but it's not a bad thing either. Now, if you want to be able to take shots, say, over 40 yards, you may want to look at a crossbow that is a little bit on the faster side. It will shoot flatter, and your arrow will get to that deer quicker. And that's pretty helpful for the longer shots. If you plan on keeping those shots to, say, 35 yards or less, a crossbow that shoots over 300 feet per second is more than fast enough. In fact, the first crossbow that I ever owned, this one right here, is rated at 315 feet per second, and I have shot several deer with this, and most of those deer have had pass-through shots, but most of those shots were at around 20 yards. So, in a nutshell, modern crossbows are plenty fast enough to hunt deer, but if you plan on taking a little bit longer shot, you may want to consider a faster, flatter shooting crossbow. Okay, does that mean a crossbow that shoots 380 feet per second is not going to be accurate at 50, 60, or 80 yards? No. Crossbow scopes are designed to compensate for the dropping of your arrow as the shot gets further and further out. So you can have a crossbow that shoots at 380 feet per second and still be deadly accurate at 100 yards. But it will take your arrow a lot longer to get to that 100 yards than if you were shooting a crossbow that was rated at 500 feet per second. And you know, just generally speaking, the less time between trigger pull and the arrow impacting that deer, the better. And go ahead and check out the links in the description below, and I do have a video that expands on this very topic. Hey archery hunters, be sure to stop by Camaro's Crawlers and check out Ronnie Camaro's full selection of used arrows. And if you need to purchase your Michigan deer hunting license, be sure to stop by Camaro's Crawlers and Ronnie Camaro will direct you to a store that sells hunting licenses. Camaro's Crawlers has all your hunting needs covered. Now, I mentioned crossbow scopes. Most crossbow packages will come with a scope. But you might buy a crossbow that doesn't come with a scope, or you may want to upgrade the scope that came with it. Crossbow scopes range in price anywhere from $50 all the way up to like $1,000. Now, for those of you that are new to crossbows, a crossbow scope is a little bit different than your regular rifle scope. A regular rifle scope will usually have one set of crosshairs inside of it, where a typical crossbow scope will usually have several different lines of elevation or several different crosshairs in it. And those different sets of crosshairs are designed that way to compensate for arrow drop at the different distances. For more on this subject, see the links below. So your basic crossbow scope will have several different elevation crosshairs in it, and it will generally have a little bit of magnification. Now, if you want to spend a little bit more, you can get a crossbow scope that has lighted reticles or lighted crosshairs. And you know, for somebody around my age, that's not a bad thing to have, especially when you're shooting in lower light conditions. Those teeny little different lines of elevation or different crosshairs within the crossbow scope can get a little tricky to see in low light conditions. Another crossbow scope feature that you may want to consider is a speed adjustable scope or a speed ring scope. That's where the speed of the crossbow can actually be dialed into the crossbow scope, and that helps the scope compensate for your arrow drop at further distances out. I did install a speed ring or a speed adjustable scope on one of my crossbows last year, and if you want to check out that video, again, see the links below. And then if you really want to go all out, you can get a crossbow scope with a built-in rangefinder. And that really takes it to the next level. And that brings me to a pretty important point. Okay, most modern crossbows can be shot very accurately at distances well beyond 20 yards. Okay, we're talking 30, 40, 60, 80, even 100 yards. Crossbows can be very accurate. Now, of course it comes down to the shooter, right? A big part of it is the shooter, but the crossbows themselves can be very accurate out to those distances. But that's really only half the equation when it comes to deer hunting and taking shots at deer at those distances. Okay guys, if you're looking for more outdoor Upper Michigan content, be sure to check out the Knetter's Practical Outdoors Patreon page. You can join for free. There's a lot of free content there. Or for more exclusive content, you can become a member. The Knetter's Practical Outdoors Patreon page has all the hunting and fishing stuff that you would expect, but it's actually different than our YouTube channel. At our Patreon page, you'll find throwback pictures of my wife and I, funny stories, and personal perspectives, all focusing on the outdoors. So if you think you might be interested in that sort of content, be sure to check out our Knetter's Practical Outdoors Patreon page. If you're going to be using your 60-yard crosshair in your crossbow scope to shoot at a deer, you really need to know that that deer is actually at 60 yards. What if it's at 70 yards? What if it's at 50 yards? Okay, bad things can happen. So it's not just about shooting accurately at these distances, it's also being able to know the distance. So if you think you might be shooting at some of these longer distances, and you have the budget for it, you may want to consider one of these crossbow scopes with a built-in rangefinder. Now, I personally like to keep my shots on deer with a crossbow at less than 35 yards. That way, I'm only dealing with one or possibly two different crosshairs, and judging the distance is not too difficult. But hey, to each his own. That's up to the individual hunter. I know plenty of hunters that shoot at distances on deer that are further than that, and they are very good at it, and they are very successful at it. You know, another consideration when buying your first crossbow is what kind of cocking mechanism are you going to get with that crossbow? The simplest and cheapest is using a cocking rope. Cocking ropes are quick and simple to use, but they do require a certain level of upper body strength. And I would even take that one step further in saying that if you're a little bit on the shorter side, you may find it difficult to cock some crossbows with a cocking rope. Some crossbows have a fairly long stroke, and you have to pull that cocking rope a long ways before it engages. And if you're a little bit on the shorter side, and you get up here to where you're pulling that cocking rope up around your neck or head, you really start to lose strength, okay? You don't have nearly the strength up here as you do when you're bent over down here and pulling back. So, again, if you're a little on the shorter side or you lack some upper body strength, maybe a cocking rope isn't your best option. But no worries, because most crossbow manufacturers do sell models with built-in crank cocking mechanisms like this one, or a crank cocking mechanism that can be attached to the crossbow before you cock it. Now, using a crank device to cock your crossbow is going to take a little bit more time, but it's also going to require a lot less strength to operate it. Okay, maybe one more basic consideration when you're picking out your first crossbow. What kind of limbs / wheels or cams are best suited for you? And I mention this mostly as it pertains to the width of the crossbow. Depending on the orientation of the cams and limbs and pulleys, some modern crossbows can be very narrow, and that might be a nice benefit depending on how you intend to hunt. But then there's also one very popular crossbow manufacturer that doesn't use wheels, cams, or pulleys at all. They just use plain limbs, more like a traditional recurve bow. Now most of these recurve-like crossbows will be a little bit wider than their cammed counterparts. But no cams, wheels, or pulleys means that they have less to go wrong, and it'll be a lot easier to change that string out if you ever have to. Okay, so we covered price, speed, scopes, cocking mechanisms, and limb design. Those are some of the basic things that I would look for if I was picking out my first crossbow. Now, those aren't the only things to consider, and I'd be curious to hear from you guys. What do you look for in a crossbow purchase? I'd really appreciate the feedback because that's the purpose of this video. We want to help get first-time crossbow buyers pointed in the right direction. And also guys, I left some Amazon links down in the description of this video that'll bring you to some of the crossbows that I own and some of the crossbows that I would definitely consider if I was purchasing my first one. Eat shark. Very good. So guys, if you're interested in more videos about getting out and enjoying the great outdoors of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, be sure to check out the entire channel. And if you enjoy what you see, please consider liking and subscribing. And for bonus content, be sure to check out our Patreon page. A link to this page can be found in the description of this video. And also guys, remember to hunt, fish, laugh, repeat. Thanks for watching, and God bless.